Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel gsipucmysuru. In the last few sessions, we discussed about the power relation of an AM wave and also we saw some of the problems on power of an AM wave. In today's session, we will be starting with the next topic, what is called as the AM transmitters. So what is this AM transmitters? The transmitters which transmit the AM signals is known as AM transmitters, and these AM transmitters not only undergo the modulation process but also it increases the power level of the signal before transmitting the signal to the longer distance. This AM transmitter is broadly classified into two types. One is called as the low level modulation and other one is called as high level modulation. So what is this low level and high level modulation ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, in the low level modulation, the modulation is done before increasing the power level of the signal. That is, the carrier signal as well as the modulating signal power level will be less, and in that same power level we are going to undergo the process what is called as modulation. After the modulation process, then we are going to increase the power level of a modulated signal. So the circuit what is required in order to modulate the signal, that power level will be less in the low level modulation. Whereas coming to this high level modulation, the modulation process is undergone in the last stage of the transmitter, that is the last stage of a AM transmitter. That is, the power levels of the signals or the signal strengths will be increased, that can either be the carrier signal or the modulating signal, and the power level of those signal will be increased before the modulation process. In the low level modulation, the modulation process will be prior to the last stage of this AM transmitter. AM transmitters contain different blocks. So, low level modulation, if this is the last block diagram, the modulation process will be prior to the last stage in the low level modulation. Adhe high level modulation alli, here we are going to increase the power of the signal or we are going to increase the strength of the signal, and in the last stage we are going to undergo what is called as the modulation. This is the main difference between the low level modulation and the high level modulation. In today's session, we will be dealing with the high level AM transmitters. That is, the modulation process is undergone in the last stage of the AM transmitters or in the last block of the AM transmitters. So let us look into the block diagram of an AM transmitter. The very first block in the block diagram of a AM transmitter is master oscillator, and the output of this master oscillator is given to a buffer amplifier, and the output of this buffer amplifier is given to a power amplifier, and the output of this power amplifier is given to the last stage, that is the modulator. That is nothing but a circuit which combines the carrier signal with the modulating signal, and the modulator output will be connected to a transmitting antenna through which the signals will be transmitted from one place to another place. So this is the antenna. So this is one line of a block diagram. The second line comes here, and this is a microphone, and the output of this microphone is given to a audio frequency processing and filtering, and the output of this audio frequency processing and filtering will be given to the next block, that is nothing but the preamplifier. And the output of this preamplifier will be given to modulating signal driver. and finally the output of this driver will be given to the modulator as the input. So this is the block diagram of an AM transmitter. So here the first line ideyalla, the master oscillator, buffer amplifier, power amplifier and the modulator. Here apart from modulator, these three blocks are used to transfer the carrier signal from one block to another block, and here we will be getting a carrier signal. Whereas in the second line we will be getting a modulating signal which will be given as a second input for the modulator circuit. So now let us see with the microphone. Microphone is nothing but a transducer which converts the sound signal into electrical signal. So whatever the signal is being transmitted, whatever the signal is to be transmitted, that will be in the form of an audio signal, and that sound signal or that audio signal will be converted into a electrical signal with the help of this microphone, and that electrical signal will be given as input for this AF processing and filtering. Here AF stands for audio frequency, and in this block the signal will be processed or the signal will be filtered. Processed and filtered and it is nothing but the bandwidth of the signal will be maintained at a constant value of 10 kilohertz, and yaude signal the bandwidth 10 kilohertz irbeku anta it's already fixed by FFC, that is Federal Communication Commission. So hagagi in this block diagram we are going to remove the unwanted noise signals, and we also going to make sure that the bandwidth of that particular signal is equal to 10 kilohertz, and that 10 kilohertz frequency signal will be given to a pre-amplifier, that is audio frequency pre-amplifier, because that the signal which is coming from the microphone will not be sufficient to drive the modulator circuit. So what we are going to do, we are going to strengthen the signal of a microphone, that is electrical signal which is coming from a microphone, with the help of this pre-amplifier circuit, and that will be again given to a modulating signal driver which again increases the power level. Here pre-amplifier will increase the voltage of the signal, whereas here the modulating signal driver increases the power of the signal, and this increased signal or the amplified signal will be given as input for this modulator. So through this we are getting a signal what is called as a modulating signal. Along with this modulating signal we need another signal what is called as a carrier signal, and that will be generated in this particular circuit what is called as a master oscillator. Oscillator and it is nothing but a circuit which generates an AC signal. AC signal of desired frequency. Nange yava frequency signal beko aa frequency signal na generate madake we are going to use this master oscillator, where we are going to use the Colpitt's oscillator. There are a number of oscillator circuits. Out of that we are going to use a Colpitt's oscillator to generate a carrier signal whose frequency is equal to Fc. Then the output of this master oscillator will be given as input for this buffer amplifier. This buffer amplifier will isolate this master oscillator and the power amplifier. If this is not done, this power amplifier will draw a heavy current or will draw a large current from this master oscillator. Whenever this power amplifier draws large current from this master oscillator, the frequency of this carrier signal will not be stable. It will be varying with time. So what we are going to do is, we are going to use a buffer oscillator in order to isolate these two signals. Along with that, we are going to use this buffer amplifier in order to match the impedance of this master oscillator and the power amplifier. Coming to this third block, in this power amplifier, we are going to use the class C power amplifier, where the power level of the signal will be increased to a larger extent such that it is capable of driving the modulator circuit. So here we are going to use the class C power amplifier circuit in order to increase the power level of the signal what is coming from the buffer amplifier. Finally, the output of this class C power amplifier will be a carrier signal whose power is very high, and that will be given to a modulator. This modulator is nothing but a circuit which is capable of combining the carrier signal and a modulating signal. Here we are going to use a collector modulator circuit. Collector modulator. Collector is one of the terminals of a transistor, and here we are going to call it as a collector modulator because the modulating signal will be applied to the collector terminal of a transistor. Hence, it is called as the collector modulator. So, in the modulator, we are going to use collect transistor as the main component in order to combine this carrier signal with the modulating signal. As soon as the modulation process is undergone, that modulated signal will be transmitted to a larger distance with the help of this transmitting antenna. So, this is all about the block diagram of an AM transmitter, which contains the master oscillator, pre-amplifier and class C power amplifier in order to increase the power level and in order to generate the carrier signal. Whereas we are getting the modulating signal through these blocks. Very first block is the microphone, in which the sound signal will be converted into an electrical signal, and that will be transferred through different blocks. Finally, we are going to get a modulating signal. As I told you, this is a high level modulator circuit where the modulation process is undergone in the last stage of a block diagram. So, before modulation process, we are going to increase the power level of the signals with the help of this power amplifier and with the help of this modulating signal driver. Clear? Now, we will move on to the next topic. The next topic is super heterodyne receiver. Super heterodyne receivers. These days, these super heterodyne receivers are playing a major role in today's communication system, and this is the most widely used receivers in the mobile radio communication, broadcasting receivers, as well as radio communication in two-way radio communication. So, just now we saw what is called as transmitters, where we are going to transmit the modulated signal from one place to another place. Now, here we are going to talk about the receiving stations. So, the receivers hendali hege ನಾವು signals capture ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ and how the signals, that modulated signal will be processed in order to separate the carrier signal from a modulating signal ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನೋಡೋಣ. So, in this super heterodyne receivers, the basic principle is it receives or it converts all the incoming frequency into a other lower frequency, what is called as the intermediate frequency. ಯಾವ frequency signals ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಆ frequency signals ನ receive ಮಾಡಿ it is going to convert into another signal of different frequency, which is called as the intermediate frequency, in short, which is represented as IF. ಯಾವುದೇ incoming signal ಬಂದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ that incoming signal frequency will be reduced to a fixed radio frequency, and that frequency signal will be called as the intermediate frequency signal, whose frequency is always less than the frequency of a carrier signal. Carrier signal ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ modulated signal frequency will be same as that of the frequency of a carrier signal. So ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಯಾವ modulated signal ನಾನು ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನೋ ಅದರದ frequency will be same as that of a carrier signal. So ಈ carrier signal frequency ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಆ frequency ಗಿಂತ ಕಡಿಮೆ frequencyಗೆ ನಾವು reduce ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, and that reduced frequency will be called as an intermediate frequency, which is always denoted by IF. And in amplitude modulation, this intermediate frequency is always fixed to 455 kilohertz. So this is the fixed intermediate frequency as in amplitude modulation. In order to generate this intermediate frequency, we are going to use a local oscillator, and the process is called as super heterodyne action, hence the name super heterodyne receiver. ಯಾವುದೇ frequency signal ಇರಬಹುದು, all those frequency signals will be reduced to a lower level, and that frequency is called as an intermediate frequency, which will be denoted by IF. Now let us try to understand this, what is called as heterodyne action. So ಈ heterodyne action ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ we'll be having two different blocks. One is called as a mixer, the other one is called as a local oscillator. So the signal will be generated with the help of a local oscillator and that will be given as input for the mixer. The other input for the mixer will be the signal what we are going to capture from the device, that can either be a mobile phone or a radio. That is, whatever the signal is being transmitted from the transmitting stations, yaudana now receive madkoltivo, that will be given as one of the input for the mixer and the second input for the mixer is from a local oscillator. So what is this heterodyne action anta helidre? It is the process of mixing or beating two signals of different frequencies in order to generate or produce a set of new frequencies. So if I am going to consider the frequency of the signal what I am going to receive as Fs and the frequency of the signal which is being generated using the local oscillator as F0, then the output of a mixer will be a set of signals. One will be the sum of these two signals, F0 plus Fs. The other one will be the difference of these two signals. We are going to get a set of signals of different frequencies. The frequencies will be F0 plus Fs, ಒಂದರದು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು F0 minus Fs. But this F0 plus Fs will be eliminated with the help of band pass filter. Band pass filter na use madkondo we are going to eliminate the sum of these two frequency signals and we are going to retain only the difference of these two signals, that is F0 minus Fs. So this itself is what is called as the heterodyne action. Heterodyne action is nothing but the mixing of two signals, of different frequencies. One frequency is Fs, the other frequency is F0, to get a set of frequencies, a set of new frequency. This is Fs, this is F0 and the set of frequencies is also different. Out of these two frequency signals, we are going to eliminate the sum of these two frequency signals with the help of band pass filter and we are going to retain the difference of these two signals. Clear? Now we are going to see what is called as the AM superheterodyne receiver's block diagram. The very first block in the block diagram of an AM superheterodyne receiver is the RF amplifier. But before this RF amplifier, we will be having a receiving antenna through which the signal which is being transmitted from the transmitting station will be received. So this is a receiving antenna, or let me write it simply as an antenna. The output of this RF amplifier will be given to what is called as mixer, which we just discussed few minutes back. So after this mixer, it will be given to the IF amplifier, that is intermediate frequency amplifier circuit, and the output of this IF amplifier will be given to a diode detector. We are going to see what's all this diode detector. And the output of this diode detector will be next given to the AF amplifier circuit, and the output of this AM amplifier circuit will be given to a power amplifier circuit, and the output of this power amplifier will be given to what is called as the loudspeaker. But in between this mixer, the other input for the mixer will be generated with the help of a local oscillator, and in the diode detector we will be eliminating the negative half cycle. So that negative half cycle or that voltage will be fed back to the RF amplifier and the IF amplifier as the AGC, that is automatic gain control, or it is also called as the AVC, that is automatic voltage control. So this is the block diagram of a AM superheterodyne receivers. So now let us see the different blocks in detail. So this RF amplifier what it does is it's going to receive the signals, it's going to capture the signals, that is desired frequency signals na capture ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು it's going to eliminate the undesired frequency signals. Suppose I want to listen for 90.8 ಜ್ಞಾನಧ್ವನಿ FM station ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ I am going to capture or my receiving station ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತ ರಿಸೀವರ್ಸ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ RF amplifier ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, and with the help of this radio frequency amplifier I am going to capture the desired, that is 90.8 frequency signal and eliminate all the other frequency signals that can either be 92.7 or 93.5. So this RF amplifier not only receives the desired frequency signals out of the many frequency signals, but also it eliminates the undesired frequency signals, and it also amplifies the received radio frequency signal. So this block will receive the desired frequency signal and also amplify that radio frequency signal. So with the help of antenna, this is the amplitude modulated wave. With the help of antenna we are going to give the signal to the RF amplifier which selects only the desired frequency signals. Now that RF amplifier output will be given to a mixer as one of the input, and that frequency signal, let me name it as Fs, and that amplitude modulated signal will also be like this itself. And with the help of this mixer we are going to get a separate signal, but to this mixer we are having another input from a local oscillator. This local oscillator can either be a what is called as the Colpitt's oscillator or a Hartley oscillator, with the help of which we are going to generate a signal whose frequency is equal to F0. Usually we are going to use a Hartley oscillator. So another input for the mixer is coming from a local oscillator which is generating a separate signal whose frequency is just above the frequency of this signal, that is 445 kilohertz. ಅಷ್ಟು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ say for example the signal Fs signal is 1000 hertz ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ we are going to generate a signal from a local oscillator whose frequency is 455 kilohertz more than the signal what I am receiving here. So 1455 kilohertz ಅಷ್ಟು frequency signals ನಾವು ಈ local oscillator ಇಂದ generate ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. If I am going to generate the signal whose frequency is just 455 kilohertz, only then I am going to get the frequencies, or only then I am going to get a signal whose frequency is just equal to 455 kilohertz. As I told you, either the frequency ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಇರಬಹುದು, but we are going to generate a separate signal whose frequency is exactly just 455 kilohertz above the carrier signal frequency. Only then I will be getting the difference of these two signals as 455 kilohertz. So this mixer ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, mixer is going to combine these two signals. Combine ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ I am going to get two separate signals whose frequencies are F0 plus Fs and F0 minus Fs. Out of these two signals, F0 plus Fs signal will be completely eliminated with the help of band pass filter, and the difference of these two signals will be passed on to the next stage of this receiver, what is called as the IF amplifier. This IF amplifier is nothing but an intermediate frequency amplifier which increases the voltage level of the IF frequency signals or voltage level of the IF signals, and that signal will be given to a diode detector which helps in detecting, which helps in demodulating the signal. Demodulation ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ it is the reverse process of a modulation process. Modulation ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, we are going to combine a carrier signal and a modulating signal, whereas here in this diode detector we are going to separate a carrier signal from a modulating signal. So diode ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, in the amplitude modulation will be having the signals like this. If I am going to consider this as the zero axis line, positive half cycle nallu ade ide, negative half cycle nallu nangu ade ide. So what we are going to do, with the help of a diode, the diode conducts only in one direction. So with the help of a diode we are going to eliminate negative half cycle and retain only the positive half cycle, because both the negative as well as the positive cycles are mirror images of each other that contain the same kind of information. So negative half cycle na remove madi, we are going to retain only the positive half cycle with the help of a diode detector, and that diode detector will separate a carrier signal and a modulating signal. So the output of this diode detector will be just a modulating signal. But here mixer inda nange ಏನು signal ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯೋ, even this will be the same, but IF frequency, that is increasing the strength of the signal. So I am going to write the amplified signal of this, but the output of a diode detector is just a modulating signal in which the carrier signal is completely removed. The carrier signal is detected or demodulated, and the strength of this signal will not be able to drive the loudspeaker. So with the help of AF amplifier, that is audio frequency, the signal whatever I have got from the diode detector, other the frequency is nothing but the audio frequency. So here we are going to increase the voltage level of this audio frequency signal. So the signal will be slightly less than this signal, or the strength of this signal will be increased using the AF amplifier. But even then this signal will not be able to drive the output or drive the loudspeaker. So we are going to use what is called as the push-pull amplifier circuit, in which the strength of a signal is increased to a larger extent. Here we are going to use the RC coupled amplifier circuit in order to increase the voltage level of this modulating signal, and here we are going to use a push-pull amplifier circuit where we are going to increase the power level of the signal such that it can easily drive the loudspeaker. And here we are having what is called as AGC, which is also called as AVC. AGC ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ automatic gain control, or AVC ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ automatic voltage control. As I told you, in the diode detector we are going to eliminate the complete negative half cycle, retaining only the positive half cycle. ಈ negative half cycle na ನಾವು ಏನು eliminate ಮಾಡ್ತೀವೋ, that voltage will be used, and that voltage will be given as input for IF amplifier and RF amplifier. Why is it given as feedback to RF amplifier and IF amplifier ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, the receivers ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲೇಸಿಂದ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ಗೆ ಮೂವ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ, ಸಪೋಸ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಲಿಸನಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದ FM ಸ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಟ್ರಾವೆಲಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಒನ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಟು ಅನದರ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್, ಅಂದರೆ ನಾನು FM ಸ್ಟೇಷನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಟ್ರಾವೆಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡು, ಆರ್ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ tune the frequency signals from one station to another station. At that time there is either increase or decrease in the strength of the output signal. So in such cases what we are going to do is we have to maintain the voltage level constant, or we have to maintain the gain of the receiver, or we have to adjust the gain of the receiver every time, each and every time. So what we are going to do is AGC will be given as feedback to IF amplifier and RF amplifier in order to maintain the gain of the receiver, or in order to maintain the output of the receiver constant. The output of the diode detector will be converted into a AGC bias voltage, and that voltage will either increase or decrease the strength of this RF and IF amplifier circuits, which helps in maintaining the 455 kHz frequency signal constant. Nange idರಲ್ಲಿ ವೇರಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ the difference will not be the same. The difference 455 kHz ಬರಲ್ಲ. So in order to maintain this 455 kHz, or in order to maintain the gain of this receiver constant, what we are going to do is the AGC circuit samples a fraction of a detector circuit or the detector output and gives that as a feedback to the IF amplifier and RF amplifier as the AGC bias voltage or the AVC bias voltage. And this AGC bias voltage is high for strong RF signals and low for weak RF signals. So accordingly this bias voltage helps in maintaining a constant output even though the receiver is moving from one place to another place, or I am tuning from one station to another station. Tuning and it is nothing but selecting the frequency. With the help of RF amplifier circuit, I am going to tune the frequency of the signal, or I am going to select the desired frequency signal. Clear? So this is all about the block diagram of an AM super heterodyne receiver. In each stage you have to write these diagrams, the waveforms also. So now let us see some of the disadvantages of this amplitude modulation. Limitations of this amplitude modulation. The very first limitation is the poor efficiency, or the efficiency of this amplitude modulation is very less. And the second limitation is the noisy reception. Noisy reception. Third limitation is smaller operating range. And the last limitation is poor audio quality. So now let us try to understand each of these limitations separately. Poor efficiency. As we have already discussed in this amplitude modulation, we are going to get three separate components in the amplitude modulated signal, and those components will be one carrier component and two sideband components. The actual information will be present in the sidebands, and the power consumption or the power level of these signals will be just equal to 33% of the total power. So the remaining 67% is just going a waste, which does not contain any kind of information. So the efficiency of this amplitude modulation is very poor, even when the modulation is done for the complete 100%. Coming to this second limitation, it is noisy reception. Noisy reception anta helidaga, the radio receiver will not be able to distinguish between the amplitude variations which is caused of noise signals or the desired signals. So amplitude variation, amplitude modulation anta helidaga, there is a variation in the amplitude, but the receiver will not be able to judge whether the amplitude is varied with the help because of the noise or because of the desired signal anta. So since the amplitude modulator cannot identify or cannot distinguish these noise or the unwanted signals, the reception of the signals will become noisy. The noise signals can also be introduced along with the signal because of the atmospheric conditions or the electrical disturbances, and these disturbances or the noise signals will be reproduced in the receiver, which makes the reception of the signal as noisy. Coming to this third limitation, that is smaller operating range. As we have already discussed, the efficiency of this amplitude modulation is very small. So the operating range of this amplitude modulation is also small. Since the efficiency is small, it cannot be transmitted to a longer distance. Hagagi, the operating range of this amplitude modulation is small. Coming to this last one, it is having a poor audio quality. Poor audio quality anta helidaga, audio frequency signals will lie within the range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Hodalva? But the bandwidth in the amplitude modulation is equal to 2 times of FM. If I am going to consider the maximum frequency of an audio frequency signal, then 2 into 20 kHz, which is equal to 40 kHz. Hoda? But for the amplitude modulation, the bandwidth of the signal is fixed to 10 kHz only. Bandwidth is fixed to 10 kHz ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ, bandwidth equals 2 times of FM ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ, FM value must be equal to 10 kilo divided by 2, which is equal to just 5 kHz. That is, the modulating signal frequency must be maximum of just 5 kHz. ಇನ್ನು ಮಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದು 5 ಇಂದ 20 ತನಕ ಏನೇ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ there will be lot of distortions in the signals. So ಹಾಗಾಗಿ the quality of the signal is very less in amplitude modulation, so will not be able to reproduce the music properly in the receiver end. So these are some of the limitations of amplitude modulation. Now let me tell you in brief the frequency modulation. Later let us discuss about the comparison between the AM and FM. So what is this frequency modulation? Even for this frequency modulation we need two separate signals. One is called as the carrier signal, the other one is called as a modulating signal. As we have discussed in the amplitude modulation, the carrier signal amplitude will vary with the amplitude of a modulating signal. But whereas here in the frequency modulation, the frequency of the carrier signal vary with the amplitude of a modulating signal. If the amplitude of the signal is increasing, then the frequency of the carrier signal will increase. If the amplitude of modulating signal is decreasing, then the frequency of a carrier signal will decrease. So frequency increase ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ it is nothing but we are going to write much more closer, that is f is equal to 1 divided by t ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತು ನಮಗೆ. So if f is increasing, t will decrease, or if f is decreasing, t will increase. So if frequency is increasing during the positive half cycle andre time duration will be less between each cycles. Ade frequency decrease ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ we will be getting a signal like this. So the frequency modulation is nothing but the process of varying the frequency of a carrier signal with respect to the amplitude of a modulating signal, keeping the amplitude and the phase of a carrier signal constant. Clear? Now let us try to discuss about the comparison between AM as well as FM. In the amplitude modulation, the amplitude is varied. The amplitude of carrier signal is varied depending upon the amplitude of a modulating signal. Whereas in the frequency modulation, frequency of the carrier signal is varied depending upon the amplitude of a modulating signal. And in this amplitude modulation, the bandwidth is small, whereas here bandwidth is small, whereas here the bandwidth of the signal is very, very high. Here it contains only 2 side bands, whereas here it contains several side bands. Efficiency is less over here. Efficiency of the signal is less, whereas here the efficiency of the signal is more. And the power can be saved in amplitude modulation, whereas here it cannot be saved in frequency modulation. All the transmitted power is not useful. All the power is not useful because only 33% is the useful power, and the remaining 67% of the power is just gone away. Whereas in frequency modulation, it is a useful power. All the transmitted power is a useful power. Right? Amplitude modulation is a noisy reception. That is, the reception of the signal is noisy, whereas here it is noiseless reception. And here we are going to see interference of the signals, whereas here no interference. Here the frequency, the signal's frequency which is handled in this amplitude modulation is medium frequency and high frequency, whereas here very high frequency and ultra high frequency signals are handled in frequency modulation. And the last difference is in amplitude modulation, the propagation, that is the forward travel of the radio signals, is by means of direct waves, sky waves and the ground waves, whereas in the frequency modulation it's only through the direct waves. So these are some of the differences between the amplitude modulation and the frequency modulation. With this, let me conclude this session at this point. In the next session, I'll be coming with a new topic. Until then, take care. Bye bye.